what happened with the aldermen? There was a guy that said there were cases that were pending that the aldermen didn't want to be investigated. Is that something that I forget the Indian guy's name, Khan something, he was working on? He said
Faisal
yeah,
Khan, who
yeah.
was the legislative inspector general
what
for a
happened
while.
to him?
Well, that's another Chicago tale right there.
Okay.
Back in 2010, when Alderman Ike Carruthers was convicted of various federal crimes,
Okay.
then Mayor Daley said, "Okay, I guess we need an IG that can oversee the city council." Back in 1989, when my office was created, there was a carve-out for the city council, and that was courtesy of Alderman Burke and Alderman Verdoliak and Alderman Mell. And so for years, the city council had no oversight. In 2010, Mayor Daley said, okay, let's do something about that, and proposed putting it under our office. Alderman Burke and Alderman Mell would have none of that, so they created this special legislative inspector general office that mostly its authority, its hands were tied. That was Faisal Khan who was selected. It was not a good relationship that he had with the city council for all sorts of reasons, and maybe there were reasons on both sides of it. But after his 4-year term expired, there was a big movement to fix our ordinance to give us full oversight of the city council. That's happened in 2 stages. First off, investigative. And so when you are reading about federal corruption investigations involving aldermen, you're probably reading about something that the IG's office is involved in. The second part of it is oversight as to its operations generally, how the committees operate and so on and so forth. That was fixed at the beginning of October of this year. So what was the legislative inspector general is now encompassed within our office, and we're moving forward from there. But you're talking about, what you're talking about I'm not aware of specifically, so maybe we should have a separate conversation
Yes, sir.
about that too.
Okay. And so, are there other stories about the break in terms of, this ComEd Exelon thing in Springfield? It seems to get bigger every day. Are there stories that are going to be breaking from your department involving some of that?
So with respect to ComEd, that really is pointed and oriented towards the state and the state legislature. That's not our jurisdiction, but that's the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI and the IRS Criminal Investigative Division. But from everything that you're reading in the news, it's reasonable for you to expect there to be a lot of things that are breaking over time. But it's what happens here in the city, in the long history of the city, and you gentlemen, I don't know if you're older than me or not. I think you're a little older than me, TC.
I'm 69.
Okay. Is we go through these periods where there seems like there's lots of corruption. Really what's happening is lots of corruption's been found. Everyone says, we're going to fix that, we're going to do something about it. It all goes quiet for a while until there's a whole new wave of it. Well, right now, we are at pretty much of a peak wave, and there's a lot that's going on in terms of investigation and likely prosecution.
How do someone who wants to apply to be in your office, is there a process that they go through?
Yep, it's a public process. If you go to the same website, igchicago.org, and in the upper right part of the home page, you will see a place to click on careers. And listed there will be all of our current openings, but also the ability to put information about yourself in and state what jobs you might be interested in, so that when one of those jobs opens up, you get a notification to take a look at it, and you can apply if you want. But it's a application process governed by law, just like the rest of the city.
How many employees do you have?
Our appropriation for 2019 was 106 employees, plus another 8 or 10 interns that we have at any point in time. So it's 110 to 115 people altogether.
Can you talk about the sex scandal with at CPS?
So one thing to understand is, as you guys know, there's lots of different parts of government that we all call the government of the city of Chicago, but some of them are really separate governmental bodies altogether. CPS is a separate governmental body with separate bonding authority and fundraising authority and taxing authority. So it's a separate component. Same thing for CTA, same thing for the Park District, same thing for other of those so-called sister agencies. What I like to tell people is that because they're separate, the oversight of them is separate. So there's a separate CPS IG. But if you tell us something that you know that's going on there, we'll make sure that the CPS IG gets that information. But the interesting thing, at least to me, and given what I do, is while all of those bodies are separate, picture the solar system right now. There's lots of planets revolving around the sun. And the sun exerts its gravitational force on all of them. The sun, picture the sun as the mayor, okay? The mayor selects the heads of all of those boards and the heads of all of those bodies. So the mayor holds lots of influence, but in terms of the oversight, it's all broken up and compartmentalized. And something needs to be done to fix that. Lori Lightfoot, when she was running for mayor, said that is a problem and something she intends to do something about over time. But to your particular question, what you have in that situation is what looks like a lot of bad misconduct over the course of many years, for which there was not a properly resourced and empowered IG and a requirement to report those things to the IG. That's been fixed. So the CPS Inspector General, about a year ago, they were given specific authority to handle EEO, sexual harassment, sexual assault matters within the Chicago Public Schools, and given the resources, the budgeting, to apply to employ 20 investigators and officers specifically for that purpose. But that's the product of what happens when you don't have independent eyes able to look at what's going on. There's a tendency of people to just kind of internalize it, pave it over, smooth it over, make it like it doesn't exist.
You want to ask a question?
Can I ask a question? I heard you over the radio when you said there's so many individual cases which doesn't get heard. So what do you suggest? That we collectively come together to file many cases? Because many of us, many people have cases. I mean, this is something, but I specifically heard you as I was driving. You said it's many cases.
Sure.
It's a lot of individual cases. So as a people who the system has been put against, what do we do?
So I think there's a couple levels to your question. So first off, the reason there's many cases is, first off, there's a lot of misconduct that's occurring, right? And there's always going to be some misconduct, but there's a lot, and it's historical, and it's over time. And part two is some people complain about it, and they bring their complaints to Internal Affairs, or they bring their complaints to COPA, and nothing seems to happen, which makes everybody else think, it's just pointless, right? And so they don't even make their complaints, right? So, and this all just builds and builds and builds. What I'm saying is, if people call in to us, if people use our hotline, as well as officers, as well as members of the public, we created an anonymous tip line for officers to be able to report, hey, something's going on in our midst that you need to look at. I know that there's a bad officer in my district. Send them to us. We now have the authority to track and oversee and monitor, if not investigate ourselves, and some of them will investigate ourselves, those things that are brought to our attention, one, and two, we will look at those things in the aggregate as a whole and say, what's going on here? And I'll give you an example of something like that. If we've got lots of people calling in with complaints about officers or a subset of officers in a particular district who are using racially aggressive, racist language in their dealings with members of the public, chances are all of those individual complaints aren't going to amount to much in the way of discipline of the officers, but collectively what they say is we've got a behavior problem. And that behavior problem means that we've got to do something different about supervision, and accountability at all sorts of different levels. And you may say, well, okay, that's just words, right? We're talking about words. But most of the time, those words, those sort of lower grade offenses are signals of officers who probably are going to do more serious things because they're not being held accountable for what they're doing. There's things called early warning systems where, say, an officer who has 10 complaints for racially offensive language in dealing with members of the public, none of them able to be sustained for discipline. But if you have a bunch of them, you would need to be called in. We'd need to look at the whole conduct and say, what's going on here? The sergeant becomes accountable. This officer may need to be moved to another area, may need to be retrained, may need to go to some form of therapy, if you will, for the way that they deal with people. But none of that happens if we don't hear about it. So what I'm saying is, yeah, we want folks to bring that to us, and they can do it anonymously.
Mr. Ferguson, first of all, I commend you for coming here to do this show. But basically, listening to you, we would all have to be blind and crazy to not look out the front doors of our black communities and see that we have not been targeted.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask a question too. In terms of contracts, Mr. Ferguson, is there a pending investigation against CHA?
Contracts of what nature?
Contracts for construction.
Yeah. So CHA has its own IG.
Oh, okay. In terms of contracts for the city of Chicago, they boast that it's 11%
Yeah.
assigned to so-called, say, black people. And they say it's 43% assigned to the minorities. But I'm willing to bet you that 11% is tied into fraudulent companies or pass-through companies.
Fronts and pass-throughs,
Yes, sir.
and we've investigated and prosecuted a lot of those. And I mentioned the information portal earlier.
Yes, sir.
During the early part of 2020, we'll be adding dashboards to that portal that tells you what the actual numbers are for minority and women business enterprise participation, not only on the basis of what's awarded, but what the actual outcomes are, so that people can see not only what those percentages are, updated in real time, but they can also see who's getting those contracts, both the contractors and the subcontractors. Because this is another thing that goes on here, and that is, even where substantial portions are going to minority or women business enterprises, they tend to go to the same people over and over and over again,
something?
right?
Yeah.
And so one of the audits that we have on our plan for 2020 is to actually look at how well the city is in terms of promoting the ultimate goal, which is to build capacity in terms of the number of businesses in the community and the size of those businesses. And the biggest metric for that is, do companies ever graduate out of the program because they're now successful and they can be fully competitive, right? To give opportunities to new people coming in. We have a sense of what that's probably going to be, but we're going to audit that. We're going to look at it. We're going to report out on it. We're going to make recommendations on it. But all of this will be public information, so it's on our mind.
Because like you said, most black companies that are pass-throughs and fronts, they use them over and over and over again.
Right.
And basically what it does is that it hurts the black community. The most economic, violent thing you can do is to be a pass-through front company.
Mm-hmm.
Because what that does is that the black company that's passing through decides that they're not going to do the work. And so therefore, when you see a construction site or you see a contract and you say, well, there are no black people on the contract, there are no black people working, but a black name is attached to it.
Yep.
And so it's more economically violent. I mean, that's more violent than shooting somebody, because it takes away from being able to build capacity, but more so than that, the jobs that could go to that community out of the selfishness of the person who owns that pass-through company, they get 1 to 3%, and then they parade them around the community as though they're somebody that we should respect.
So I couldn't agree with you more. And let me just say, African American owned businesses are often very reluctant to call us and tell us what is going on with respect to, other businesses that we know are fronts or we suspect are fronts or pass-throughs. And the reason is this: they're afraid of there being consequences if the general contractors find out that they've spoken about what's going on, which is why the ability to send complaints to us and information to us anonymously is really important. And we're allowed to take that information anonymously, and we do investigations on fronts and pass-throughs, and not just the owners of those crooked subcontractors that do that, but where we're able to develop the evidence, the general contractors as well.
Okay, so let me ask you this then.
Thank you.
You, the way you were talking and seemed forthright to me, aren't you kind of worried that when you start stepping on too many people's toes with those elephant feet, that they might want to get rid of you, tell you to slow down? I mean, is there any way that when people call you, they know they're going to get service? Because see, like I believe the sister over there was saying, sometimes we hear people talking and it's all talk, and
Right.
It's like the same music played at the same party all the time.
That brings to mind. So I was appointed as one of the members of the Police Accountability Task Force that reported out, what was going on in the police department. And when we went to hearings, people just said, we've had it with task forces, we've had it with studies. TC here is pointing at himself. He was one of those people. And I learned a lot from that experience. Here I am thinking, I'm trying to help do the right thing. But the reality is that you have decades of experience where people like me say, we're going to try to do the right thing, and nothing happens. What I would encourage folks to do, if you're wondering, do we actually do what I say? Or are they going to do what I say that we're going to do? Go look at our website and see what we are doing. And that's all I can tell you, is the results are the only thing that actually count.
That's your body of work. Miss Hicks, go ahead.
This is what I have to say. Maybe there's work getting done for those that call in, but if you really look out the door of the black community, the South and the West Side, and every day you look at the news, I'm sorry, it's not getting done. And let me just say this. I have a bunch of friends, and I have a very close friend that was a policeman, and he told me, you all will never really get anything done, because we line our people up as judges, policemen, firemen, attorneys. So it's a wall stacked against us. And I just want to say this to my people, something that you said. I was driving, I heard you. Get the number, call in. Don't just complain to each other. Let's take it. Like you said, let's take it to the streets. Not literally out in the streets, but let's follow the protocol. Let's blow these phones up, because this has to stop at some point. At some point, it has to stop. Just TC telling his story today on the radio. Facebook went down. The radio went down. We know the powers that we're coming up against, but guess what? We got a power that's higher than any of this power, and we're coming saying, let our people go, or deal with the consequences.
So
it's time.
So let me say one more thing in response to that is, so there's a lot of there's well-grounded skepticism that any part of government's going to do something if you call them up, right? And that's what we're up against. Fact of the matter is we don't know where to look and what to look at unless people tell us. We don't just wait for people to call. We have a community engagement office with people who are out in the community every day. We want to, if there are community organizations, community leaders that want to meet with us and bring people together without having to leave their community, because they don't know what happens when they leave their community, we'll come to you. We'll listen to those stories individually. We'll talk to you individually. So please call in and let us know you want us to come out to you.
For the listening audience, the State of Chicago Office of the Inspector General, Joe Ferguson, is in the house. And so the OIG tip line is 866-448-4754. That's 866-448-4754, and there's a live person there till 5 o'clock.
Yeah, every day.
Every day. And you want to report corruption at igchicago.org. Report corruption at igchicago.org.
We got a caller. Caller, you on the air?
Yes. My name is Vince Davis, and I'm a member of the National Inspector General's office, and president. I'm in law school as well. I have an issue with the Chicago Police Department Recruitment Department, and I've been fighting this for the last 25 years. I found a plethora of evidence, fraud, using government seals, all sorts of things, conspiracy. And I have all the documentations to prove, Mr. Ferguson. In the past, I've sent you several letters to no avail. But one person put in a resolution to have me reinstated, and the city council. Beavers held it in committee, and but he was probably told to do that. But again, I need to talk with you, and I can show you all this evidence that I have. Fraud upon the court in my administrative hearing. The police board refused to represent me because I was an African American, but I stood fast and went back to school, got a couple of masters, even went to law school. I got some information for you. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she sent me a letter. Mayor Daley refused to contact me. Ron Emanuel refused to contact me. I had the love for Lori Lightfoot. She sent a letter. I sent a letter to her with all the exhibits and everything. She got back with me in 4 weeks. So again, what is your email so I can send you all this information? What the city of Chicago did, the procurement department did, they forged Mayor Daley's signature, did all sorts of things. What can I do to get in contact with you?
So we're going to go back to this. So far as an email is concerned, what I'd like you to do is email reportcorruption@igchicago.org and type in a summary of what it is that you would like to talk to us about, but saying expressly that you talked to the Inspector General Joe Ferguson live on radio, and he directed you to send the information specifically to them, and that what that makes sure is that I'm alerted to it, and then I can make sure somebody follows up with you to take all of your information and your materials.
And I would do it in a memorandum form.
Okay.
That's what I would do. I'm going to do it in a memorandum form.
That's great.
And it's been said, and only one person came to my rescue, Senator Paul Simon. Everybody else, it's just like I was up against the wall. It affected me and my family, but, I can say one thing. All my kids, they got college degrees, and I saw it through. But I got some information will turn your head 3 times around.
Well, then we'll be talking.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, brother. Another call.
Next caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
It's Apostle Witherspoon.
Hey, Apostle Witherspoon. How you doing?
Pastor.
God bless you and Harold.
Hey, God bless you.
Yeah,
I couldn't make it to your celebration, but Red was there, so I'll make the next one, Apostle. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just thank God for you. I just want to thank you for sending Red to represent. It was a good time. We had a move of God.
Yes, sir.
Out there.
Yes, sir.
And I thank God for your guests on the show. I thank God for him. We continue to pray for Inspector General office that they continue to do the right thing. Because this is about the people that are working with him. He only one man. Sometimes we put one man on the fine line, but it's about people working, doing their job as committed in their office, carrying out the paperwork and checking, doing their job. See, a leader only strong as them that are around him. That would make a strong leader. You got to put the right people around him that are concerned about people. It's Chicago. There's a lot of corruption, but it takes time sometimes to solve these problems. And sometimes we have to be patient, and we have to just pray for our leaders and just say that they do the right thing, and they've been elected to do all jobs that they carry out the right thing to do. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you for that
Apostle.
truth.
Thank you, Apostle. Appreciate that.
You got another caller? Caller, you on the air?
Hello.
Caller.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, I called the hotline to Joe Ferguson's office. They said they do not handle only but city issues. and I have a county issue that's against the Inspector General of the county. So what do you do in a situation like that?
We should take the information anyway so that we can figure out. So what often happens is people call in thinking we can do something about it. We'll take the information and figure out who actually should have that information, who's capable of doing something about it. So I'd like you to do the same thing. I'm sorry you have to have you sort of put in another call. But if you either call or email reportcorruption@igchicago.org and say you spoke to the Inspector General, Joe Ferguson, on the phone and he directed you there to provide this information, we'll take that information and we will figure out where it should go. Because you're right, we can only look at the city. If it involves something with the county, though, we'll figure out where it is and who it needs to be taken to.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We got one more caller. Caller, you on the air.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I'm on.
Yes, you
How
are.
everybody doing?
All right.
Yep.
I would like to ask the gentleman well, first I wanted to say my name, so I want you to write my name down and look it up if you can, please. My name is Levante Ferguson, and I can prove that the city and the state destroyed a lot of my life, and I don't know who to go and ask for no help because I done been to City Hall, I done been to police board meetings, I done been to the Attorney General office, I done been all over. I want to ask you one question. I want you to look this up. Show me one person got out on a holiday. I got out Thanksgiving morning, 1989. That's unheard of, Charles, as an adult, as a juvenile, right? So I got a mandatory release out date. That means that somebody in Springfield didn't do their job, but they didn't do it on purpose. Like I'm a Thanksgiving turkey or something. 1985, John Bird and his crew at Harrison and Kennedy destroyed my life. And I can prove that when I came home, 71st Street Police Station, 71st and Cottage Grove, it's an ongoing situation all the way up to, I got to 30-some years old until I learned how to try to go to the news and go try to protest about it. It's when they stopped coming out to destroy me. And I want to know, who do I talk to about these type of situations? Because I have called many officers, and I have got absolutely no help. Lawyers won't take the case, period. I mean, they done gave me DUIs, and they found $20,000 in a limo because they seen my background and saying that they thought they could get away with what they thought they can get away with because they have got away with a lot doing this to me in the past.
So
that's my question.
So a couple things. You can do the same thing that we've told the other callers, is either email into reportcorruption@igchicago.org and put in that you were on the air with the Inspector General, or call our hotline. And can you call out that number again?
Oh, yes, sir. That number is 866-448-4754, Levante. You get it?
And Levante, there are lawyers who specialize in Burge-related cases, and I'm wondering whether you've actually spoken to them. So if you call in, we can have a conversation about what lawyers you've spoken to, because maybe you're not speaking to the right ones.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Next caller. Caller, you on the air.
Hey, how you doing?
All
This
right.
is Keith Perry.
Hey, how you doing, Perry?
Man, I'm holding on. I'm listening to Mr. Ferguson speak, and first of all, Harold, you guys, TC, you guys know what I went through with the injustice that happened to me being held at 26 in California for 2 years and 11 months of my life because of dirty corruption from Pamela Childs out of the 5th District. I was arrested from that district on all arrest with trumped up charges. I live in North Beverly View, which they don't govern in this section. All of the stuff that happened to me as a result from lies, because my ex-wife happened to be sleeping with one of the detectives at the time. We are now divorced, but I have gone to OEIG. I have gone to COPA and OPS before then. This is 5 years now. And every 6 months, they send me a letter talking about they have not reached a final conclusion in the investigation. I have been to several attorneys because I have no more money. No one is willing to step in and do anything. So I hear you talking on the radio station, and it's hopeful. But at the same time, for someone like myself that has had 5 years of pure D Hill trying to address the injustice that happened to me, and not only me, but other people like myself, and the doors are being slammed in our faces. So we are very, very, very frustrated with the whole situation, but I yet keep knocking on doors. I yet keep saying, can you help me? And I'm calling in today to ask you, can you do something about this situation, and can it be addressed? Because it's a damn shame that it's been 5 years and no one has addressed any of this, and this detective is still at the 5th district when I've gone to the superintendent and they have just blocked me. It's just ludicrous what's happening.
So,
and I'm asking, what can you do?
So what I can do is this, if you should have been given a log number for the complaint
I was.
that you registered with COPA, right? If you were to direct an email to reportcorruption@igchicago.org that states your name and the log number, and a reference, and the last time you were given an update by COPA, which sounds like no update at all, basically saying, look, my case has been open for 5 years, and I would like the public safety section of the Inspector General's office to find out why it is taking this long. That will trigger a referral to that section of the office that has the ability to look into the system and to place calls directly to COPA to find out exactly why it is and what's going on. And to the extent that there is some explanation that you ought to be given to explain why it's been open for 5 years, because that just shouldn't happen at all.
Well, I can tell you this, Mr. Ferguson. I don't mean to cut you off.
No
I've
worries.
done that.
Okay.
And the response that I've gotten has been, well, we're still investigating.
Yeah, but
it's always vague.
We can find out why. We can find out what's really going on. I mean, they're going to give you their standard response, which is surface level and is not going to tell you very much. But a case shouldn't be open for 5 years. You shouldn't be getting that response, and so we can actually look into why. So if you again send an email to reportcorruption@igchicago.org and say specifically you spoke to me on the radio, and you are providing the log number of your COPA case, which has been open for 5 years without explanation, and you're asking it to be looked into, we will at least find out what is going on with the investigation itself.
Well, I will definitely follow through, and I'll even, if I can, CC you on it, because I have all of the letters that they send every 6 months.
Okay, and that's fine.
Yeah,
Thank you, brother.
Send it to him, Brother Keith. I'm
Thank
sure
you, brother.
Mr. Ferguson is going to do something.
Yeah, he's going to do something. Thanks, Keith.
Keith has been through a lot of stuff. Thank you, Brother Keith.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, man.
Next caller. Caller, you on there with Mr. Ferguson, the Inspector General.
Yes. Thank you so much for having him on, everybody. And thank you for coming, Inspector General Ferguson, sir.
Thank you for calling in.
I have something for you that you can pass on to your colleagues in other departments, because this one, I don't believe, is directly tied to your division. And you did mention that there are subdivisions and all these other categories.
Yep.
My situation is one that's so complicated, I couldn't get a lawyer to come near me with a 10-foot pole. And the corruption goes all the way from starting from the local levels of the court system up through the chief judge, up through the Secretary of State, the recorder of deeds, the clerk of the county court, all the way up from that level to the Consumer Financial Bureau, up through the Department of Justice. I've reached out to inspector generals all the way up to the top of the United States of America, sir. And because of who I am and the color of my skin, absolutely nothing was done, except theft. My property was stolen. I have been harassed, threatened with plenty of harmful things. And it's so corrupt. It's so coerced. It's so stressful that a lot of people like myself are just devastated over the stress levels that we have to go through to get simple things done because we're being blocked by people who look like us, who have been put in position, sir, to call themselves gatekeepers to keep us oppressed and to steal from us. From the tax levels where they have tripled my taxes down there in the tax division just to get away with the crimes, and they cover each other up when they do these things, sir. So can you please, I'm not asking you to tend to my needs because I know you can't, or at least directly, but you can at least have all of these other agencies look into the aldermen, the councilmen, the Madigan servants. I mean, it is terrible what we're dealing with in the Illinois city or country or whatever they're going to call themselves soon when they get this real ID thing rolling. The corruption is just not in Illinois. It's widespread here. And I hope and pray that your coming on serves as a beacon for hope for a real hero to rise up in us as the people. We, the people, have to be our own heroes with the help of people like you. So thank you for coming on the Butt Naked Truth with Harold Davis and T.C. McCoy and Robert Ross and everybody else there, Karen Hicks. We just appreciate you coming, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller. Caller, you on the air.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
This is Mike, TC. How you doing?
Hey, Mike.
What up, big
It's Mike.
Hey.
All right. Hey, Harold, how you
Hey,
doing?
what's up, brother Mike?
Mr. Ferguson, how you doing?
I'm good, sir.
I like Mr. Perry had a problem with the same officer, Detective Pamela Childs. To my understanding, she's no longer over at 51st Street. I think she went into retirement, early retirement. I spoke to a investigator. It was a murder by my mother's house, and my mother had cameras out in front of her house, and so they wanted to come in and look at her and see if she had any video. But I told them I'm not the person who got murdered. I knew the person, not personally, but I knew him. I talked to him on several occasions, and he told me that somebody wanted to break in my mother's house, and he told him, no, don't do it. So I told the police, you know, I had a run-in with this detective over at 51st because this detective came out, and I was telling him that I'm not going to allow you to see this because I don't care for the cops, you know, because of this dirty cop, Pamela Childs. But I'm only going to allow you to see it because I'm helping this guy who got killed.
Right.
Okay. And so, however, anyway, he said, well, she's no longer with the department over there anymore. So, but anyhow, I was wondering if she's part of this. It was a federal investigation over at 51st and Wentworth against some cops over there. They wouldn't say who the names of the cops, and they left it at that. You know, they did the investigation, and I don't know whatever happened, but I would like to know if she was a part of that investigation for those officers who had been removed.
So since I wasn't part of the investigation, I don't know the answer to that. And if I did know the answer to that, it would depend on the nature of the investigation, and I may not be able to tell you. But one thing I've heard you say is that you may be in possession of video relating to a crime that occurred on the streets of a really serious nature, and you and your mother were not comfortable enough to provide it to CPD. And if you are willing to share that with us, and we'll connect it up to the original incident, and actually, if it is of relevance to be pursued, we will pursue it or make sure it gets pursued.
Well, it's no big deal. I mean, the police know who did it.
Okay.
Okay, they know who did it. All right. So, but anyway, the detective went before the grand jury, falsified testimony to the grand jury to bring an indictment against me.
So let me suggest one other thing, Mike. Is this? If you can jump on a computer and go to igchicago.org and go click on Information Portal, and then go to Public Safety, you will see a dashboard of the complaint and disciplinary history of all officers of the Chicago Police Department. You've indicated that this officer, Pamela Childs, may have retired, may have all of a sudden. She probably has a complaint history. You can pull her up by name and see exactly what that complaint history is and what the outcomes were, and if it actually relates to some form of criminally investigated conduct, you'll be able to see that online.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Next caller, you on there?
No more calls. And so,
No more calls. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Ferguson, can you go over some of the things that are on the website again?
First off, all of our audit reports. I talked about the gang database report. That's up there with lots of information. We did a report recently on school resource officers in the public schools, where there's lots of issues these days. Made lots of recommendations, lots of other stuff. So all of our audit reports, with our findings, our recommendations, and what action was taken in response, that's on the website. Summaries of investigations that were sustained, whether it was because they were administratively or criminal, you'll see that on there in our quarterly reports. You'll also see, if you go to the information, there's a public survey, there's a public safety survey that members of the public can take. We've already gotten 2,000 responses from members of the public, asking questions about your experience with law enforcement in the city and things that you think we specifically need to be aware of or looking into. And you can also click on our information portal, where you will see visualizations of information relating to all sorts of the composition of the police department, racially, demographically, how they're detailed. If you want to know how many officers are detailed specifically to your district, as of yesterday, you can see that on our website. If you want to know about the patterns of investigatory stop activities in your neighborhood, you can see that on the website.
That's on the what?
That's on the information portal on igchicago.org.
Okay, all right.
Before you go, tell Harold them the difference between detail and assigned. Most people don't know that. See, detail and assignment is different. When you detail, that means that you're just there for a short period of time until they decide to move you out. You're not really there. And you assign, when you assign to, I'm assigned to the 15th district. Someone could say, I'm detail in. That means that they might be there temporarily, correct?
So that's absolutely right. So you can see you can see the numbers of people assigned to each district. So you know actually a comparison, your ward relative to somebody else's ward, your neighborhood versus somebody else's neighborhood, whether you're getting the full complement of officers that you need to patrol your community. That's one. It does not yet account for details, because what happens is people are assigned to a particular district and then detailed to some other unit, right? And so you don't exactly know where everybody is all the time, but we're going to add that detail information as well. But at least you have this general sense. How does the 7th Ward compare to the 43rd Ward in terms of officers assigned? What's the racial and gender years of experience composition of each of those? I can tell you off the top of my head, this is 7, Englewood. The average tenure of officers assigned to Englewood is about 8 years, okay? The average tenure of officers assigned way up on the northwest side is about 18 years, okay? And there's a reason for that, and that is we assign new officers overnight in Englewood, right?
So they don't be familiar.
Right, and all sorts of issues stem from that. But you can see that information and then go to your alderman and say, hey man, what are we doing here about this issue?
I would like for our alderman to also ask this question, Harold. Why is it that you have to have a college degree to catch a person that don't have a GED? That eliminates a lot of our young black men who use the police department as a step up. When you require them to have college degrees, and I told Harold on this show, you don't have to train black people who live in they call violent communities who the criminals are.
Right.
So why is it that when they take a test, it takes them a year to get back to the person to tell them if they passed or fail? I just don't understand that.
We're looking at a few things right now that speak directly to that. So one of the things that you can see is racial composition by number of years of service. And if you look, you'll see the greatest percentage of African Americans represented in the department are people with 20 years or more years in. The smallest number are people with 5 years or less in.
Harold said that.
And you can see that on the website, and it's updated every month. We're looking at the entire recruitment and academy system to understand why it is that we are not attracting and we are not graduating out African Americans as part of the department, because we are becoming more racially imbalanced rather than less.
Yes, sir. So, and one more thing, what about the jobs on the website you were talking about?
igchicago.org. At the top, you will see, you can click on careers, and you will see what job openings exist right now. You can also put in your information and tell us what jobs that you see that you may be interested in, so that when they open up, we'll send you an email saying, hey, you can put in an application now.
I'm looking at the change order audits that you've done on the PBC.
Yep.
And it looks like the low bidders become the high bidders at some point.
Well, that change orders is part of the game, as you know.
Exactly. So there's a lot of information, Mr. Ferguson, that I didn't even know that you had it on your website, on your portal. I mean, this is good stuff. I mean, so we will continue to push people towards the website, and any OIG tip line is 866-448-4754, and report corruption at igchicago.org. And so, really want to give you the last say, Mr. Ferguson.
Again, thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you for coming.
The hardest thing is what Ms. Hicks was talking about earlier, which is people don't believe anymore, and they don't know where to go where they can believe. But you got to start somewhere. And we can't change things without the help of the people and the things that the people know. So please, please, please call in, email us. You can do it anonymously. And to all of and to you three gentlemen and everyone in the studio, thanks for letting me be here. And I'm happy to come back anytime you see a major report from us and you want to talk about it. I'm happy to jump back in.
You got an open invitation here. Anytime.
Thank you very much.
Joe Ferguson, Officer Inspector General, City of Chicago. Thank you for coming. We got a ton of folks that were listening. And a lot of folks just sending me texts and emails wanting to thank you for coming on and giving some hope. Like Ms. Hicks say, where's the hope? Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. That's
Thank
it
you.
for us. Undisputed, untold, uncut, uncensored, unbought, unapologetic, straightforward. Down the middle, butt naked truth. We say the things most afraid to think about or dream about. We say liberation without continuation of the miseducation, misinformation to the black man and black woman. Down with the accommodators, up with the liberators. Trade with those who trade with you. Buy black, bring your dollars back. We'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Sylvia Frederick on deck.
Man, we've got to get rid of the pimps and the pushers and the prostitutes and then start all over again clean.
Hey, look, nobody's pushing me anyway, okay? I mean, not you, not the cops, nobody, man. I mean, you want to get rid of the pushers, I'll help you.